The next question says, what is the difference between the test progress report and the test summary report? In order to provide information to stakeholders, you will need two reports, the test progress report and the test summary report. So you are performing a testing activity, for example, system testing. So system testing will take a long period of time, okay? If you are writing a report to the stakeholders, for example, to the team leader or to the project manager or to the client, in order to make him informed of the status of the project, in this case, you will write a test progress report, for example, on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis. But when you finish your system testing, okay, you are finished with this phase of testing, in this case, you begin to write test summary report. So like we see here, he says that the test report prepared during a test activity may be referred to as a test progress report. The test report that's prepared at the end of a test activity may be referred to as a test summary report. The test report content changes based on the context of the project and the audience of the report. So if you are writing, for example, a report to the team leader, the content of this report is different from the content of the report that is delivered to the client. The content of the test progress report is mostly three things: what we have done in the previous testing period, what we are going to test in the next period, and the status of the test object that we are testing. So for example, if we are testing a component, we say this is what we already tested in the previous period and this is what we are going to test, and this is the status of this component now regarding quality. And if there is anything that's preventing us from continuing our testing, we begin to write this thing down in order for it to be solved in next period. The next question says, which mistakes do testers tend to do? And there is no ideal answer to this question, okay? Testers might make many mistakes, okay? Just being late for work, for example, is a mistake. But we are talking about popular mistakes that most of testers tend to do. So the first thing is bad communication. A very important trait of the software tester is to have good communication skills. So if you are not good at communicating with the stakeholders, with developers, with the product owner, with any other team member, this is a very big problem. Also, being afraid of asking questions. An important thing in the tester is to always ask questions, okay? Why does this happen in this way? What is the expected behavior of this function? And so on. So if you are too afraid to ask questions and you are just making assumptions about how the software should work, this is not a good thing. Also, another mistake is to begin testing before understanding the scope and the requirements. Okay, before executing your test cases, before designing your test cases, you should analyze all the work products that you have, understand them well in order to go in a good way in your testing process. Writing poor defect reports. So writing a good defect report is a very important thing. On the other hand, if you write bad quality defect reports, this is a bad thing, okay? It will waste a lot of time. The developer mostly will not understand what you are talking about. Also, missing some requirements while writing test cases. This is why we said earlier that we need requirements traceability matrix in order to make sure that all requirements are covered with test cases. Another thing is not having any type of planning, which is monkey testing or ad hoc testing, okay? Monkey testing or ad hoc testing means that we don't plan anything. You just open the application or open the website and go in it like any other user. This is not good. At least you should have a checklist which guides you throughout your testing. The last mistake and the most important mistake is false positive and false negative. False positive happens when you report a defect which is not a defect. For example, you are testing the login functionality. While you are testing this functionality, the login doesn't work. You are certain that you entered a correct username and a correct password. But let's say, for example, that while you are clicking on the login button, the internet connection dropped. In this case, there is nothing wrong with the login functionality, but the problem is in your internet connection. So in this case, the defect that you reported is not correct, it will be rejected, and this mistake is called false positive. On the other hand, you might do another mistake which is called false negative, and this happens when there is a defect in some component but you didn't test this component or this scenario. And in this case, you reported that there is no defects in this component while there are defects that should have been exposed in this component. The next question is a trick one, and it is asked a lot in interviews, and it says, if you reported a defect to a developer and he rejected it, what shall you do? So there are many solutions to this question. Let's go through them. You shouldn't do all of them, okay? There are options that you should choose one of them based on the situation and based on the character of the developer that you are dealing with. So the first thing is to communicate with him, okay? Talk with the developer, tell him that this is a defect. If he's not convinced, try to show him an example. Okay, so for example, this is a login form, you need it to be in this way, and you think that it has a defect, show him another project, okay, show him another application that contains a similar functionality and tell him, okay, this is how they are applying this functionality. We need it to be like them because this is the correct way, okay. Another thing is to return to the work products. So if this functionality or this behavior is documented in the SRS or the product backlog, just refer it to it and show it to the developer. Another thing is to ask the product owner. So this happens when there is no documentation of this functionality, okay? If it is documented, you don't need to return to the work product. But if it is not documented, return to the product owner and ask him, how do you want this functionality to be performed? Another thing is to check the test environment. There might be a problem in your test environment or the developer test environment. If this is an Android application, you might be testing on Android 8 and he is developing and testing using Android 10. So in this case, you might need to repeat the steps on different environments in order to make sure that there is no problem with your environment or the developer's environment. Another solution, which is not very recommended, that's why we are saying it at the end, is to escalate the issue. Okay, you can go to the development leader or the test leader and tell him, okay, this developer is rejecting my work. You should only escalate the issues to the managers if this developer is repeating this behavior a lot. Okay, for example, if this developer is always rejecting your defects and doesn't accept any of them, in this case, you might escalate the issue. The last solution, which many testers forget to do, is to accept that it is not a defect. Sometimes the developer is correct, okay? He might be right, and in this case, you should accept that it is your fault. And this is an example of false positive. You reported a defect, but it is not a defect.